to start a business wasn't scary for me. I had a big advantage than most, which was my wife was teaching at the time, and she said specifically, we had to talk about it, and she said, I don't care what you do. You have 3 years, and I want to be done, and you need to, it needs to support us. So I did the math, and I was like, we have to cover. She gets paid as a teacher, $42,000 a year.
Which at the time is really good.
Yeah, it's great. But it seemed like a lot. How am I gonna get to that from starting a business? And it just blew my mind. Now I look back and dude, we spent $42,000 a month on payroll and chemicals. So I didn't get paid from the business really for 3 years. And so I had 3 years to roll everything back into it and just build it, which most people don't have that opportunity. They got to try to be getting money out of it right away. And so it helped me grow it a lot quicker, and I could take some risks that I couldn't normally, maybe buy some equipment and try out. And some of the stuff didn't work, and we have some equipment we don't use, and some things we got out of weeds. We used to do weeds and realized we don't want to be in that. Not bad, but either we need to go strong in it or focus where we were going. My wife came out, we got a big job to spray pre-emergent at an HOA. It was 110 and just brutal. And I remember midway through the job, is me and my wife and a buddy that would periodically come help. My wife started to cry and said, she gets embarrassed, and I said, you went to college for this? And I was like, oh. I was like, it's gonna be, I picture it's gonna be good. She was still supportive. That's the only time I ever feel like she was negative towards it. Yeah. But also she'd been out 20 hours working with me in 110 degree weather. We just worked 2 days in a row, and she's been a teacher. She doesn't work outside a lot. So it was just brutal to her. The hard part wasn't the hard part. It was just the weird office. Running the office was pulling teeth for me. Being criticized so much for random things from customers, negative feedback. I took it really hard. And I look at my goals that I set, it's important to state, I never had really lofty goals. They were just well, if I could make, $85,000 a year, that would be perfect. And I think I could do that by year 4 or 5. We blew that away. And then I was if the company could do $250,000 in a year, let's do that by year. And that was in year 5 as well. We blew that away, and it never got super discouraging for me as of, is this going to work out?
How do you view debt?
I hate debt. I just feel like it burdens me more. And I have some debt and some business investments and things like that, but I prefer to keep away from it. And then also I personally feel like it helps me in ups and downs of the market. When things plummet, I can, live on a shoestring budget and grow more and take advantage while people are falling off and losing because they have to make so much money to cover that debt.
Is that position shared by your peers?
We have debates on it. My buddy's one of them's big time, and he makes tons more money than I do, probably 10 times. And he'll use debt more, leverage it and move it around. And now that interest is getting higher, the debt's not as appealing, right, to him, because now he's going to be paying 6 to 7. Now it's 8 or 9, right? For some business loans and things like that to leverage it. If I was doing this over again, I would go work for a major company. Because I had experience with smaller companies, but I want to see a little bit more of the corporate structure. And I think that would have saved me quite a bit of money on mistakes. That it didn't seem like it at first, but I would have known to avoid some things that I didn't avoid. Early on, I remember driving down Bluff. I know my guy's out in Ivan spraying, and I pass him. What the freak? What are you doing? I didn't have GPS tracking at the time. Didn't have, and so I had to call him. What are you doing? There's I had to go to the bathroom. This gas station's bathroom is better. You try 50 bathrooms to get here.
And you're okay.
And I don't even know if that's true.
Yeah.
He's just you'd be driving home to use a bathroom clear over where he lived, but it was hard to track and monitor that. I wish I would have worked for a bigger company so I could have learned what attributes in people make good technicians, what attributes make them good office, because it sent me back I kid you not, that crappy employment, that crappy employee, I bet it set me back a year. I finally had to go park down the street, watch him pull up to a house, go knock on the door, come back and sit in his truck, sit there for 15 minutes, and then drive off. He was my first employee.
Oh, no.
And he was a friend. Like I knew him from high school. I didn't know how much he digressed since high school. You know, it'd been 5 or 6 years. But from then, like, so many of the customers only wanted me. So now I couldn't hire anybody else. And I saw the signs early with him, but I refused to cut the cord. Like, when I could have done it in a month. But I let it go 3 because I just didn't, like, I tried to be nice and tried to be, and you just don't have that flexibility. You got to, like, they're going to kill your company. Like, they will murder it. It cost me thousands of dollars. That's a big hit. But you just keep, okay, we're going to tweak and just a new policy. We don't do this. That's a terrible thing to do.
We only can use the bathroom within a 5-mile radius. We're not going across town.
Or I'm going to pay the price to put GPS tracking in the truck now. I know it was only like $35 a month, but that seemed like too much.
And that was like hiring 2 employees for
that was way cheaper than I thought.
Yeah.
So early on, you don't have that flexibility. You got to know that and nail that. And I wish I would have worked for somebody that I could have seen that better and how they're doing quality control and how they're doing making sure that doesn't happen. That would have helped me a lot. As I make more money, I feel like I get a little bit more risky.
Maybe the risk goes down because you have more.
Yeah, because it's not going to affect me as much. Like, right? Like, I lose a certain amount on this investment. It's not as critical now that I'm making a little bit more. I'm more interested now in businesses as opposed to, like, I'll max out my Roth and do some other things. But, like, I like business investments of businesses I know where I can help participate, but I don't have to be involved in the day-to-day. And I feel like there's way more upside. If that business succeeds, it's going to be paying way more than any stock will and stuff like that. My life was everything I'd ever dreamed of. Like, my wife's outstanding. My kids are awesome. So I'm making well more than I ever dreamed of. I have some sweet investments. Just bought a company in an area that I've always wanted to be in back in Tulsa in Arkansas. And then it's just, I think I have a sinus infection. I go in the hospital because it won't go away. And then start coughing up blood and I'm being rushed to the ICU. When they were running me up there, what's funny is I didn't think about this with my wife because I knew my wife knew how much I loved her. Like, I'm not a perfect husband by any means, but I know I've given her my best. Like, it was a crappy best, like I'm not, like, but it was my best, right? I didn't have any regrets. And everyone, no one was saying I was going to die or anything like that, but their faces were, you could see it was bad, like really bad. People were, when doctors look scared and the nurses look scared and they're rushing you up and they're, okay, you're going to be, and they're running around. There's a lot of talk, like frantic in the hall. And you're like, this is way worse than I ever thought. And they're rushing me in and it hit me and it's still like, I thought if I die, my kids are going to remember me as a grumpy dad. And not a bad dad. I'm not a mean dad. I just, like, I didn't want to raise little brats. So I was kind of on them a lot and riding them a lot, but I was working a lot too. So when I was home, I was kind of grumpy. Thinking of that really altered how I want to be perceived. Like, I don't need to spoil them. I don't need to, but do they know how much I love them? Was like the biggest thought in my mind. Are they just going to remember my dad was kind of grumpy?
Right.
Like, you know, and at that age, like, it was devastating. Like, most doctors, when I saw them after I got out, I didn't know how bad it was until they're like, oh, hey, you're looking great. We didn't think you'd make it. Oh.
You're like, thanks for telling me now.
Yeah, thanks. It makes a lot of sense because I didn't feel like I was going to make it, but no one ever said. Everyone's always happy and smiling, like, oh, you're doing great. Like, but then they tell you after you're out, like, oh, it was bad. So after all that and reassessing, I didn't really work. Like, I dabbled in it a little in the office, but I didn't really work for a year and a half, the last year and a half. I've just barely in January after the transplant been able to start diving into stuff. I had my 2 best years ever. And a lot of that was tons of work in the beginning We got really good people, and things went really well. Like, how grateful I am for that, right? Like, it would have been disability, it would have been like government support to try to, or family support trying to get me, because I could not work. And how grateful I am for that I put in all that work before to get me through that. I probably need to go to some counseling. I come up with, I'm a little more aggressive now after that year and a half of like, I didn't have a lot of choices. Like, a lot of things were forced on me, that like doctors and like, this is what you're doing. Like, not having choices really affected me more than I thought. And so I kind of lash out a little bit more, probably more doctors of like, no, like, this is, I know you said that, like, you weren't really listening. This is what we're going to do. And if you can't do it, I'll go find somebody else. Like, my wife's like, calm down. Like, you don't need but I had so many times felt like I had no choice. Things were forced on me. Nobody was listening to problems. Like, I threw up every day for a year and a half.
My goodness.
Every day I was throwing up and like nauseous, and I couldn't eat food. Like, I lost 100 pounds, and I'd go to doctors, and you could tell they weren't listening. They were writing a script like, okay, I can't really eat, I'm nauseous. So I'm there writing a script as I'm trying to explain, like, here, take this. Okay, I've already taken this. Like, what's causing this? Like, I can maybe definitely one, possibly two doctors I felt like really listened to me, of trying to dive into it. Most of it was, here's a prescription. Like, dude, why am I throwing up every day? Like, why am I?
Stop solving the symptoms, please.
I don't need more meds that are going to have side effects. And so that's affected me. But I've realized I lied to myself a lot, and I lied to my family, in the sense of, I was building a business. I'm doing it for them, right? It's Breaking Bad. Because in Breaking Bad, at the end, when he finally admits, I did it for me. Like, the whole time, it's always, I'm doing it for my family, for my kids. I'm going to die, and this is for them, so they have something. And at the end, he finally admits, like, it was for me. I liked it. Like, I lied to myself. I'm working these long, crazy hours, and when you have to, you have to. I'm not downplaying that. But I was well beyond have to, and now I just wanted to build up more, and I enjoyed it. Like, not as like, I want to be rich, but I really enjoyed building the business and I was depriving the time with my family and using the excuse of like, I'm doing it for them. Like, but I was doing it for me, right? Like, they had plenty, they had sufficient, and I could still grow it without sacrificing my time with my kids that I'm never going to get back. Yeah, it did. And I still want to grow. I want to do well. I love doing the business side, but I have to realize for myself that I'm doing that for me at this point because I love it. And there's some other things, but it's mostly for that I loved it. Like, if I hated it and it was just terrible, I would just stick where I was. But I really enjoy growing and working on the businesses, but I can't do it at a cost of quality time with the family.
Retirement. Have you considered that? Like, what is your take?
So my opinions and thought of what I want changed a lot when I bought out a gentleman. He was in his 70s and he was still spraying. And I'd been battling. This was right after I just went through that really crappy employee. And then I'd been battling finding another good one. I thought, maybe I'll just do it myself. I would have made way more money for the first probably 6 years if it was just me spraying and just taking on the cherry accounts that were. But after hiring him, seeing like, if I do that, I'm doing that for life. No, my retirement would have to be selling the business. Like, I'm doing that and I'm locked into this. And then my earnings will always be this and never bigger. And so that really helped me want to pay the price to hire somebody. And seeing some people in my neighborhood that didn't have retirement, and just how one of the husbands, I remember vividly, he died. And so his wife's been alive for 20 years since, and she's living on whatever Social Security gives her is all she has.
Oh, no.
And it's a lot of people have to do some charitable things for her, and they should do. Like, you can't. But I did not want my family like that.
So ultimately, retirement for you is a distant thing where you work significantly less than you do now, but you'll still always have, let's say, a hand on the steering wheel.
Yeah, and so because I enjoy it, and maybe when I'm 60 or something, or hit that age, maybe I hit a wall that I'm like, oh, I don't enjoy this, and I do sell out, or but I would like to work less, and I would like to be more charitable, and I like to travel more. But it's not so I can not do work, or I don't plan on ever selling my business till I can't do it anymore. I want to be involved in it.
So final word of advice to someone starting from zero and trying to make it.
Make your mistakes early. Make them while they're cheap and inexpensive mistakes. Just find out what you want to do. Like, I see people jumping into businesses like, oh, let's start a business. They jump into it and realize they hate that business. Do you know why they realize that? Because they never really got in the business before. They just sounded like a great idea to make a lot of money. And they jump in and realize they hate it. Because there's way more like day-to-day grind than is where it's hard. It's not always the fun part. Find out what you want to do. And you don't always have to stick with that. But really focus on something you enjoy. Don't be a serial entrepreneur that has zero knowledge. You're going to waste a lot of money and a lot of time. And the amount of knowledge you're going to gain isn't going to be that great. And I'll throw out one last. Obstacle is the Way. Have you read the book?
I have not. I would love to.
It is the greatest book I've ever read. And it is phenomenal about overcoming trials and problems. And if we avoid the problem here, we will never grow enough to overcome the next problem, which probably is bigger. We need to learn, and it doesn't mean you have to go right through it. It talks about that. You don't have to you can go around it or up, but you don't avoid
build some stairs.
Build some stairs, or you can go, but you can't avoid it and go a different direction. You have to get past the obstacle that's in the way and find a way around it. And it talks about all sorts and it is about, there'll be bigger problems, because all my life, problems that I thought were massive, and I hope this was my biggest problem, that I just overcame, but probably not going to be. And if I didn't overcome that, I definitely won't be able to overcome the next one.